Hi, I'm Dave Stotts from Drive Through History. Happy Thanksgiving. In most American households, the fourth Thursday in November is all about sharing a big meal. For many, it's also the start of the Christmas season, the 4-day weekend for family, friends, food, and football. The national Thanksgiving holiday goes back to Abraham Lincoln in 1863. Now, prior to that, there were other Thanksgiving declarations on a periodic basis going back to George Washington's first proclamation in 1789. But to truly appreciate the early tradition of Thanksgiving Day in America, we need to go back to the start of it all, Plymouth, Massachusetts, and the arrival of the Pilgrims. This is Plymouth Rock at Pilgrim Memorial State Park in Plymouth, Massachusetts. This park was created in 1920 to celebrate the 300th anniversary of the Pilgrims landing here. Traditionally, this unassuming rock marks the spot where the Christian story of North America first began. While the first known reference to this rock dates to 1715, it's had quite a history of being the Plymouth Rock. In 1774, the rock was actually broken in half during an attempt to move it to the Plymouth Town Square. The top portion was then moved to the Pilgrim Hall Museum in 1834, and then returned here to its original site in 1880. Plymouth Rock was originally about 20,000 pounds, but now you see a version that's been broken, sawed, and chipped over the years by historians and treasure hunters alike. The Pilgrims intended to land in Virginia, but the Mayflower was blown off course here to Massachusetts. With the weather too dangerous to keep sailing, the captain insisted they make landfall. One of their leaders, William Bradford, wrote this: "Being thus arrived in a good harbor and brought safe to land, they fell upon their knees and blessed the God of heaven, who had brought them over the vast and furious ocean and delivered them from all the perils and miseries thereof. Last and not least, they cherished a great hope and inward zeal of laying good foundations for the propagation and advance of the gospel of the kingdom of Christ in the remote parts of the world." "200 years later, at the bicentennial celebration of the landing of the Pilgrims at Plymouth Rock, Secretary of State Daniel Webster said, 'There is a sort of genius of the place which awes us. We feel that we are on the spot where the first scene of our history was laid, where the hearths and altars of New England were first placed, where Christianity and civilization made their first lodgment in a vast extent of country. Let us not forget the religious character of our origin. Our fathers were brought hither by their high veneration for the Christian religion. They journeyed by its light and labored in its hope. They sought to incorporate its principles within the elements of their society and to diffuse its influence through all their institutions, civil, political, or literary." The Pilgrim Memorial State Park is the perfect spot for one of those coin-operated binocular machines. Just drop in a coin and clean off the germs,
Okay, I'm a little more thorough than most, and take in the local natural beauty.
Viewing time has been exceeded.
Pro tip, kids. Clean off the machine, then add the coins. This painting, The Embarkation of the Pilgrims, still hangs in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. It proudly and prominently depicts the first pilgrims kneeling in prayer to God. This is Plymouth Plantation. It's a living museum created in 1947, which attempts to reproduce the original settlement established by the Pilgrims here in the 1620s.
With no king-appointed person on board the Mayflower with authority to take charge of Plymouth Colony, the Pilgrims gave themselves authority and created their own government. They wrote the Mayflower Compact.
We whose names are underwritten, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and the honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic.
Contrary to what our history books might tell us today, Puritan Christians came to the New World with a distinctly Christian vision for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith.
Once the Pilgrims agreed on their community structure, the hard work of running the colony began. Sadly, the Pilgrims were very unprepared for their first harsh winter in the New World. More than half of them died of exposure and starvation before spring of 1621. By the following winter, an English-speaking Indian named Squanto befriended the Pilgrims and taught them how to build durable homes and grow maize. Governor William Bradford wrote that Squanto was, quote, a special instrument sent by God for their good beyond their expectations. In the late fall of 1622, the Pilgrims, Squanto, Chief Massasoit, and the Wampanoag people feasted on maize and wild game, giving thanks to God. Many historians consider this gathering the first Thanksgiving on American soil.
In addition to Plymouth Rock, Pilgrim Memorial State Park is home to another powerful memorial, the National Monument to the Forefathers. Formerly known as the Pilgrim Monument, this statue honors the Mayflower Pilgrims. Dedicated in 1889, this is said to be the world's largest solid granite monument.
On the main pedestal of this 81-foot monument stands the heroic figure Faith, with her right hand pointed toward heaven and her left hand clutching the Bible. 4 figures are seated around her, which represent the principles on which the Pilgrims founded their commonwealth: morality, law, education, and liberty. Each was carved from a solid block of granite.
The right and left panels contain the names of those who traveled on the Mayflower. Now, the rear panel back here contains a quote from Governor William Bradford. Thus, out of small beginnings, greater things have been produced by his hand that made all things of nothing and gives being to all things that are. And as one small candle may light 1,000, so the light here kindled hath shone unto many, yea, in some sort to our whole nation. Let the glorious name of Jehovah have all the praise. There you go. The story of the Mayflower Pilgrims and their impact on Thanksgiving in early America. By the way, this full-scale reproduction of the Mayflower just received a total restoration for the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims' arrival in New England. Known as the Mayflower II, the ship was in dry dock in Connecticut during my last drive-through history trip, but it's once again home at Plymouth Harbor. I highly recommend a visit. So, while the Pilgrims get credit for establishing the tradition of Thanksgiving in America, it wasn't until after the American Revolution that the first national holiday was declared. For that story, let's take a quick jaunt to Washington, D.C. While 1622 is believed to be the year of the first Thanksgiving with the Pilgrims at Plymouth, it wasn't until many years later that the holiday was made official. In 1789, Congress asked President George Washington to proclaim a special day of prayer and thanksgiving for our young nation. Here's the beginning of his formal response to that request.
Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly to implore His protection and favor. And whereas both houses of Congress have by their joint committee requested me to recommend to the people of the United States a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many signal favors of Almighty God, especially by affording them an opportunity peaceably to establish a form of government for their safety and happiness. Now, therefore, I do recommend and assign Thursday, the 26th day of November next, to be devoted by the people of these states to the service of that great and glorious being, who is the beneficent author of all the good that was, that is, or that will be, that we may then all unite in rendering unto Him our sincere and humble thanks for His kind care and protection of the people of this country previous to their becoming a nation.
On behalf of our young nation, George Washington dedicated Thanksgiving to God. His proclamation was distributed to newspapers, governors, and local leaders throughout the United States so that Thanksgiving could be celebrated by everyone. Washington himself marked the day by going to church and donating special meals to prisoners. In 1817, New York became the first state to officially adopt an annual Thanksgiving holiday. Other states soon followed, each celebrating on a different day in the fall. 10 years later, the writer Sarah Josepha Hale, famous for her nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb, launched a campaign to establish Thanksgiving as one national holiday each year. For nearly 4 decades, she published editorials and wrote letters to government officials, earning her the nickname Mother of Thanksgiving. Abraham Lincoln finally heeded her calls, and in 1863, at the height of the American Civil War, he scheduled a National Day of Thanksgiving for the final Thursday in November.
Over the years, American presidents, governors, and mayors have delivered a number of Thanksgiving Day proclamations. This is probably the most famous one yet, delivered by Abraham Lincoln in October of 1863. The year that is drawing towards its close has been filled with the blessings of fruitful fields and healthful skies. To these bounties, which are so constantly enjoyed that we are prone to forget the source from which they come, others have been added, which are of so extraordinary a nature that they cannot fail to penetrate and soften even the heart which is habitually insensible to the ever-watchful providence of Almighty God. No human counsel hath devised, nor hath any mortal hand worked out these great things. They are the gracious gifts of the Most High God, who, while dealing with us in anger for our sins, hath nevertheless remembered mercy. It has seemed to me fit and proper that they should be solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledged as with one heart and voice by the whole American people. I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens.
After Lincoln's proclamation in 1863, Thanksgiving was celebrated on the last Thursday in November every year until 1939. It was then that President Franklin D. Roosevelt moved the holiday up a week in an attempt to increase holiday shopping during the Great Depression. Roosevelt's plan, known sarcastically as Franksgiving, wasn't well received. And 2 years later, in 1941, he returned Thanksgiving to the fourth Thursday in November. And that's where it's been ever since. If we're going to talk about the history of Thanksgiving, we have to talk about the history of my favorite part, the traditional Thanksgiving feast. First up, turkey. Thanksgiving and turkey go hand in hand. The big, meaty game bird has probably been part of the Thanksgiving spread since the very beginning. In fact, William Bradford, the governor of Plymouth Plantation, journaled about what the Pilgrims ate that first fall feast. He mentioned venison, waterfowl, cod, shellfish, and eels. Ugh, I hate those slimy things. Along with vegetables, nuts, fruit, and corn. As a highlight, he wrote, and besides waterfowl, there was a great store of wild turkeys, of which we took many. Today, according to the National Turkey Federation, yes, that's a thing, nearly 90% of Americans eat the big bird on Thanksgiving. While I love turkey, I broke with tradition a few years ago and went with the turducken. That's right, a chicken stuffed into a duck, stuffed into a turkey. Gotta say, it was pretty darn good. I soon discovered the concept has a long history outside of North America, especially in the UK, where it's known as a three-bird roast or a royal roast. In England, they often replace the turkey with a goose, the gooducken. The gaps within the birds are often filled with seasoned breadcrumbs, sausage meat, or some other kind of stuffing. The result is a firm, layered poultry concoction ready for roasting, braising, or even the Texas barbecue. Next up, stuffing. Americans have been stuffing turkeys with family recipes for generations. I'm partial to my friend's Simon and Garfunkel recipe, which includes parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Get it? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. And never mind. When it comes to stuffing, what many don't know is that the most popular ingredient for centuries was oysters. Yes, what is now an expensive delicacy was once a plentiful and inexpensive source of protein. In early American homes, oysters were used to stuff turkeys and other game birds to stretch the meal, thus the term stuffing. Oysters were also used in breads, sauces, pies, soups, and stews. Who knew? Cranberry sauce, the turkey's other most popular dinner companion, is next. In medieval England, cranberries were known as mossberries due to the fruit's boggy habitat. In early America, the name cranberry came from German settlers in the 17th century who called the food craneberry. According to tradition, Cranberry refers to the long stamen of the fruit's flower, which looks like a crane's neck. Crane, you get it. Cranberries were mentioned in a colonial writing dating to 1672, saying, "Indians and English use it much, boiling them with sugar for a sauce to eat with their meat." By 1796, a widely used cookbook called American Cookery suggested the traditional way to roast turkey was with boiled onions and cranberry sauce. So there you go. The reason we put little fruits with our meat on Thanksgiving. Next, sweet potatoes with marshmallows. Although not my thing, many view the Thanksgiving meal as incomplete without this marriage of the tuber with caramelized gooiness. The tradition seems to date back to the 1800s when the national Thanksgiving holiday really took off in America. Northerners discovered sweet potatoes, long eaten in the South, and incorporated them into their traditional meal. Now, marshmallows had just become a new thing in France, where chefs beat the roots of the marshmallow plant with egg whites and sugar. In Europe, they were a rare handmade treat. The marshmallows went mainstream in America after entrepreneurs substituted cheap gelatin for the expensive marshmallow root and figured out how to manufacture the sweet lump of chewiness on a mass scale. In 1917, the Angelus Marshmallows Company distributed a recipe booklet with all the ways Americans might use marshmallows, including the classic pairing with the sweet potato. And now for desserts. Pumpkin pie. The English were masters at wrapping anything in a crust, from meats to vegetables to fruits. In fact, English cookbooks featured pumpkin pie recipes as early as the 1600s. Thus, American colonists grew pumpkins from their earliest years in the New World. And there's a long legacy of pumpkin pies being a part of holiday meals. By the 1800s, pumpkin pie was synonymous with Thanksgiving. In 1869, the Connecticut Courant, the oldest continuously published newspaper in America, declared turkey and pumpkin pie as the, quote, two inevitable Thanksgiving dishes. So, now you know a little bit more about the history of the traditional Thanksgiving meal. It's time to eat. For a look at some other unique Thanksgiving traditions, let's travel to New York City.
I really couldn't help getting excited about being back in the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps. Top down, sun in my face, soaking it all in. Well, soaking it all in definitely happened as a huge rainstorm blew in from nowhere. So luckily, with the push of a button, up went the top and we're back in business, exploring Gotham's streets, boroughs, and traffic. This is New York City, the bustling heart of American finance and entertainment. Situated in one of the world's largest natural harbors, the city is comprised of 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and the Bronx. New York City is known for sights such as Wall Street, the Empire State Building, Central Park, Times Square, and Grand Central Station.
New York City, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps. Since I'm here, I thought I would tell you about some really unique Thanksgiving Day traditions that started on the streets of New York. November 25th, 1783 was celebrated as the day that British forces finally left New York City after the Revolutionary War. Known as Evacuation Day, there was a long tradition of celebrating its anniversary each year around Thanksgiving, with costumes, parties, and parades in the streets. In fact, Evacuation Day was a major holiday in New York until 1888. So it was a popular Thanksgiving tradition for decades. Nobody really knows the connection to Evacuation Day, but at some point, men known as the Fantasticals also started dressing up in crazy costumes and parading through New York City around Thanksgiving. A few historians say the Fantasticals were somehow related to Guy Fawkes Day, celebrated in England on November 5th, but nobody really knows for sure. Just another eccentric Thanksgiving tradition that stuck around for years. Then, sometime around 1817, kids started dressing up in costumes and roaming the streets too. Instead of the trick-or-treat that we hear at Halloween, kids could be heard saying, "Please, mister, a penny or a nickel for Thanksgiving." It came to be known as Ragamuffin Day.
How did begging start as a Thanksgiving tradition? Well, it's thought that New Yorkers somehow combined Evacuation Day street parties with an old New England Thanksgiving custom. A New York Times article in 1893 explained. In an old book descriptive of New England characters and customs, one reads that on Thanksgiving Eve, it was the custom of poorer people, servants, and dependents to go to the houses of the rich to ask for substantials to help celebrate the coming feast day. And the richer people felt it incumbent upon their dignity and hospitality not to allow anyone to go away from their doors empty-handed.
So in New York City, Thanksgiving, kids, costumes, and begging all combined into one street tradition known as Ragamuffin Day. By the 1880s and 1890s, more and more children took to the streets dressed as ragamuffins. Along the way, they added Pilgrims, Indians, Uncle Sams, and other characters to the mix. By the beginning of the 20th century, New York City was crowded on Thanksgiving Day with rowdy, costume-begging children.
The New York Times again described the scene. From early morning to late evening, thousands of children roamed in ragamuffin costume, blowing horns, throwing harmless missiles, and playing at begging. The practice of dressing up as ragamuffins seems to be growing among the city children each Thanksgiving Day, and the parents of many seem to take an interest in the displays, judging by the great variety and fantastic costumes which the children wear.
In 1925, the Madison Square Boys Club held the first of what became an annual Thanksgiving Day parade to protest children begging for money. The boys carried banners reading, "American boys don't beg." This was the beginning of the end for Ragamuffin Day. After the stock market crash in 1929, money became tight for everyone. Then, through the 1930s, New York City schools and the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children openly discouraged kids from Thanksgiving begging. The Boys Club also threw a Thanksgiving party to help keep kids off the streets, where they offered a turkey prize to the child with the best costume. Finally, Mayor LaGuardia imposed a ban on all begging or panhandling in New York City, which included children on Thanksgiving Day. Despite some holdouts, the tradition died a little more each year, until Ragamuffin Day disappeared into history by the beginning of World War II. So, now you know. Thanksgiving can be a very lonely day for some people. It can also be the start of a very lonely holiday season for others. At its heart, the story of Ragamuffin Day here in New York City reminds us to help out the poor and downtrodden, the homeless and the lonely. It's just the right thing to do around Thanksgiving. Maybe serving at a soup kitchen, homeless shelter, or a church outreach. Maybe opening our homes to a coworker, single person, or someone who has recently lost a loved one. You know, that's something we should all strive to do better on Thanksgiving Day. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is another popular New York tradition, known for its lineup of oversized balloons that float over the route from Central Park West to the Macy's department store here at Herald Square. The event marks the beginning of the Christmas season for many Americans. Since the first parade in 1924, the event has only been suspended from 1942 to 1944, while World War II was being fought overseas.
In 1924, Macy's store employees marched to the famous Macy's Herald Square, the flagship department store on 34th Street. There were floats, bands, and live animals borrowed from the Central Park Zoo. At the end, Santa Claus was welcomed into the Macy's store to launch the Christmas season for all the kids. Thousands of people showed up for the first parade, so Macy's declared it an annual event. In 1928, the zoo animals were replaced by huge balloon characters, which became well-known symbols for the parade.
Today, the 3-hour Macy's Thanksgiving Parade is still considered the world's largest parade. It always starts at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on Thanksgiving Day and has been televised on NBC since 1953. For over 60 years, the Rockettes of Radio City Music Hall have been the act that launches the festivities. And since the beginning, the parade has always ended with the arrival of Santa Claus to ring in the Christmas season. After the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attack on New York City, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was held just 2 months later. As a part of an effort to find a sense of healing and normalcy, the beloved holiday tradition endured. The event was marked with an undertone of grief as downtown recovery workers were still sifting the smoldering ruins at Ground Zero. In a show of patriotism, first responders marched in the parade, carrying 2 specially made American flags. From above, the flags took the form of the fallen Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. One Thanksgiving tradition in recent decades is the presidential turkey pardon. Each year, the President of the United States is presented with 3 live turkeys by the National Turkey Federation. The President pardons one of the turkeys, who gets to live the rest of his life on a quiet farm somewhere, while the other 2 are sent off to be dressed for the Thanksgiving meal at the White House.
The first record of a presidential turkey reprieve goes back to Abraham Lincoln in 1863. According to White House reporter Noah Brooks, a live turkey had been brought home for the holiday dinner, but one of Lincoln's sons, Tad, interceded on behalf of its life. The reporter wrote, "Tad's plea was admitted and the turkey's life spared." Probably the most memorable turkey pardon occurred on November 19, 1963, when a huge 55-pound white turkey was delivered to President John F. Kennedy by the National Turkey Federation. It had a sign around its neck reading, "Good eating, Mr. President." Upon receiving the turkey, JFK said, "We'll let this one grow," and he asked to have it returned to its California farm. Tragically, the president didn't make it to Thanksgiving that year. Just 3 days after his turkey pardon, President Kennedy was shot and killed in Dallas, Texas. Many years of turkey gifts and presentations have been recorded at the White House, but it wasn't until November 17, 1989, that President George H.W. Bush officially pardoned a 50-pound turkey and firmly established the annual tradition. With animal rights activists picketing nearby, he joked, "Reprieve, keep him going, or pardon, it's all the same for the turkey, as long as he doesn't end up on the president's holiday table." One president who seemed to have a special relationship to Thanksgiving was President Ronald Reagan. Every year during his presidency, he used the occasion of Thanksgiving to draw the nation back to its founding principles of faith and humble gratitude to God.
More than 3.5 centuries ago, a small band of pilgrims gathered around a harvest time table in New England to thank God for the bounty he'd bestowed upon them and for carrying them safely through their first year in the New World. Now, so many years later, we Americans still take time in this season to thank someone larger than ourselves for all the blessings he's given us. We thank him for the richness of our land. We thank him for our freedoms. We thank him for the goodness and decency of our nation. We thank him for the opportunities we have as Americans. And like those early pilgrims, we thank him for carrying our people safely through another year. Happy Thanksgiving, and God bless you.
In the Stotts household, one of our family traditions is to wake up really early on Thanksgiving Day and run the turkey trot. While the turkey trot supports a good cause, if I'm honest, I think it might just be my way to rationalize eating more turkey later in the day, and night, and next day. You get the picture. Next up, you want to be the coolest kid on the block this Thanksgiving? Well, then you should learn how to make a hand turkey. First, just get some colored paper and some colored pencils and crayons. Step 1, trace your hand. The wedding ring bulge there. Okay, index finger, thumb, the turkey neck, and Step 2, finish the body. Step 3, make a gizzard, a beak, and an eye. Thinking what I'm thinking? Googly eyes. It's just... Step 4, add a wing. Also some feet. What can I say? It's a gift. Step 5, give your turkey some color. Okay, starting with like a blue, green. Sorry, I chew my tongue when I color. I think a little purple. Get the wedding ring in there. And definitely orange. Almost took out the gizzard. Okay. Don't forget, you gotta color the body, okay? More of a traditionalist. I just like a nice brown, and I don't even have to look. I'm that good. Don't even have to look. And for me, step 6, I'm gonna give my turkey a pilgrim hat. I know it's a little cliche. You guys can do your own little personalized bling on your turkey to go bigger. Everything's bigger in Texas. A little bit of yellow for the buckle. There you go. Coolest turkey in the neighborhood. Almost forgot to give it a name. He's Reginald. Last, sign it. So this is autographed hand turkey. If anybody on the crew wants this, I'm gonna leave it right here. Anybody want this? Just, hello? You can have it. Totally free. I got a lot more of those. Yeah, anybody?
I gotta go get a drink.
Tom, you want it? Tom, you wanted this, right? I don't even care. No big deal. Take it.
I'm good. I gotta go.
Yeah, but...
Catch you later, man.
No. You wanted this, right?
Gotta go do something.
It's cool. You can have it. Put it up in your house. It's not a big. Put it on your refrigerator. I don't care. It's.
Go get some water.
No, you can have it. Seriously.
Somebody else wants that.
Tom! To join me to talk about Thanksgiving and family traditions, I'm joined by my old friend, Bob Smiley.
What is
Bob,
going on,
it is so good to have you on the Drive Through History Show.
It is great to see you again.
Thank
I am
you.
a huge. Darren, I love you.
It's Dave. It's Dave, yeah.
The cue cards are not drawn very well.
No, well, you're fired.
And it's great to be on this show. I can't read what the name of the show is. But anyway, I'm super excited.
Yes.
This is awesome.
Bob, we've known each other for a long time. We haven't stayed real close contact throughout the years.
You will not return my phone calls?
You and I were friends in college, Abilene Christian University, many, many years ago.
What's their motto? You can't put a price on Christian education, but they bill you for it.
That doesn't fit on a T-shirt very well.
It does not.
But yes,
I'm more of a moo-moo. It takes a lot of writing, but yes.
Thanks for being here today to talk about Thanksgiving. I've always been kind of curious watching you on stage. You know, I have sort of a career that's in front of people, but it's mostly in front of a camera, in front of these, knuckleheads. So when you're up there, what's it like for you when you're up on stage?
It's phenomenal. And I mean, the things I get to do now, it's going to sound like I'm bragging, but the other night I did a junior high lock-in at 1 a.m. right after the shaving cream fight. So,
wow.
Yeah,
that's the coveted gig, right? Yeah.
My career is going pretty good right now. So, yeah, no, it's phenomenal because, I mean, laughter is just powerful, and I get to provide that. And there's so much going on. So, like, you have families coming. I was doing a show in California last weekend, and I looked out, and there was a grandmother, had a little walker, and she was down front, and she had her grandson there, and he was goth, like had all the face piercings, the eyebrow, it looked like he fell face first into a tackle box. And I'm looking at, you couldn't have picked two different people like to come together, but she had brought her grandson because she knew it was going to be clean comedy, and they were both like leaning on each other and just laughing. So I even just kind of paused and just looked, and I was like, oh, thank you, God, for just letting me be a part of something that he orchestrated like comedy. So yeah, it's pretty good. And I got a free can of shaving cream from that last show I did. So
congratulations.
Hurts. But he's very, very funny. Actually, that's a good example. Since I didn't look like him growing up, especially, I went to him my second junior year in high school, and don't judge me. You guys are supposed to be Christians, okay? Like, you're supposed to judge me silently in your mind. So I went to my dad, and I was like, I don't look like you at all. Was I adopted? And he goes, yes. But they brought you back.
So, okay, you get out of bed, your feet hit the ground. What does Thanksgiving look like for you? When does the eating start?
It usually starts because my mom and my wife, and her mom will like cook a big meal and everything, and then it usually starts with me walking in, and it's usually about 10:30, and I walk in and I do the same joke every year. I walk in and I go, I am stuffed. And they're just slaving away, and they all look at me like it. So it usually starts with something like that, something snarky.
Come in with like a Taco Bell, cup.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I couldn't eat another thing.
But yeah, we like to start with blood boiling and just get that, that tension in the air. And,
holiday traditions.
How the Pilgrims, I think, probably did it a little bit.
Clearly.
But no, we all kind of help out. I help out by staying out of the kitchen. They say that's my talent.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I was thinking I had this great moment. It happened during Thanksgiving that really kind of inspired me from a Christian standpoint. But so some of my first bits was about my mom's cooking. So I'd say we had a saying at our house where there's smoke, there's dinner. My mom used to use the smoke alarm as a timer. The timer would go off, and you'd hear boop, 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 and she'd come running in. Dinner's ready. Everybody stop, drop, and roll. Fix yourself a plate. One bit I did, I can't believe I got away with this, but I was like, you know how it says in the Bible that a dog will return to his own vomit?
Yes.
Ours wouldn't. That's how bad the cooking, like I would say stuff like that. And here's what's funny. I did those bits for about a year and a half when I was starting. My mom is a phenomenal cook. And so I finally went to her and I was like, hey, I'm doing jokes about you. I was telling a Thanksgiving story. Yeah. And I was like, and she goes, hey, whatever will pay your bills, because we're not going to anymore. So she was on board with it. But yeah, it's all about just the meal, and the Bible talks so much about, you know, like having a meal together and stuff. And so I think it's just the perfect time just to sit and just love on each other and make sure that people know that they're loved. And yeah, it's a phenomenal thing. So we eat, we all go into the living room. We all try to get comfortable and stuff. I like to, when I was a kid, I used to like to look around in the living room to see what I might look like when I get older, because it was all our family, and, you know, like, you know.
Don't do that.
I know.
No, don't do
I was
that.
like, oh, I hope I have a thick mustache like Aunt Debbie. And, you know, it was, she hates that joke, but she won't shave. So, but we.
How do you still have a family after the career like this? Yeah. How have they not disowned you?
They actually haven't told me where this year's Thanksgiving is going to be yet, but
Okay.
yeah, but it is. It's just all about, you know, we're from Texas, so we watch football, and I mean, it's just a phenomenal time of just hanging out, and it's just a great time to reconnect. That's what I think about it. It's like recharging, just relaxing, eating a good meal, and, you know, and just being thankful.
Do you have food guilt ever, Bob? I mean, when you stuff your face, I mean, you know, you glutton yourself on the turducken. You know what turducken is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A horrible
It's kind of
animal
the
accident.
Russian dolls of
that
meat.
Went really bad, yeah. We had a turducken one year. We couldn't afford the duck or the chicken, but we still called it a turducken. We put some other things in there.
Yeah.
On a different topic, have you ever had squirrel?
Not that I know of.
Well, come this Thanksgiving, and we'll take care of that. Yeah.
You told me you and your boys are hunters, right?
We
You
are big hunters.
You got any hunting stories?
We have, actually, I do, and I talked about hunting on this last special of mine, so I didn't know if we wanted to play a clip.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. That reminds me of a comedy clip that I did once.
Let's take a look.
I talk about hunting. Is that okay here? Like, okay, whoa. Okay, you have a knife, don't you? Because some people are against hunting. Well, if you really are for hunting, I'm not bragging, but I just wanted I got a 10-point buck this year, and yeah, and it did not mess up my truck like I thought it was going to. But my dad and I would go duck hunting, and I'm sorry if that offends you, but that is a beautiful father-son moment where the sun's coming up in the morning and it's peaceful, and my dad and I'd be hiding under the slide by the swing set, and I'd be tearing off the bread, and they'd come waddling over. Good times.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. Available at bobsmiley.com. Can we put a logo?
No, we can't, actually. No,
okay.
No.
All right. Why am I here? But, and all joking aside, like, you know, hunting is a hot topic and stuff, but it really was how we fed our family. Like, that's what fishing and hunting and all that kind of stuff. And it would seriously make for some beautiful Thanksgiving meals, because all our family would come over and they'd bring deer, and they'd bring, you know, like whatever, like they had been hunting, turkey and all this kind of stuff. Chicken, something called opossum. I don't know what that was, but we would bring.
French?
Yeah, very French. They would bring, you know, all this food, and we would sit around this meal that we had all, like, participated in and put time in, and we got to enjoy a meal together, and we would tell hunting stories.
I'm just curious, as a father of 5 guys who probably are very just outgoing and funny and assertive and go-getters, you spend your entire life trying to make people laugh. How do you, like, when it's time to get serious with them and, you know, throw the book at them?
Yeah.
How do you make that pivot?
And this is going to sound crazy, but I'll look at them and say, it's time to get serious. That's it. I know that's it's a not funny answer or anything, but because we're joking all the time. I mean, we're living in a house built by comedy, built by jokes, you know, like paid for by jokes. And so we joke a lot, and it is allowed. Now that my wife has the nose clip, she can spend a lot more time in the house. The house has a particular smell with 5 boys, or as she says, 6. But so it's a very jokey house. But when it comes time to get serious, I will look at them and go, hey, look, it's time to get serious. We need to address this issue.
Yeah.
And they're really good about flipping the switch and being like, okay, we're a very fun, loving house and stuff, but when it's time to get serious, like, they listen. I mean, they've got their AirPods in, but I assume they have the music turned down.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. We just, you know, whenever it's time to get serious, we get serious. But it is funny because they know if they can make me laugh, that then I have to leave the room because I have to go write it down in my joke book. And
Yeah.
so,
Do you credit them during your act? And this one came from my son?
here's what I do, because my kids, and we're the fun house, so like kids always want to come over to the house. And so even our neighbor kids are like, they'll do something weird and they'll be like, hey, is that good enough to be in your act? Like everybody wants to be in the act.
People throwing you free content, free IP all the time.
It's great, but my kids then found out about royalties. And so they were like, you know what, and I was like, your royalty is your cell phone, your health insurance, you know, your car insurance.
Well
that's
played.
your royalty.
Yeah.
And you actually owe me some now, so let's get to writing.
How deep do you want to go with the whole royalty thing?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm hoping people are sitting at home watching, having a little bit of fun, listening to your funny stories, and spending some time together. I hope that this holiday hasn't sort of turned a corner in America, because I know that sometimes it's very controversial to talk about the Pilgrims and colonialism and Indians, and it gets real politicized.
Yeah.
I like kind of what you're focusing on: family, sharing a meal together, being grateful, being thankful.
Yeah, that's what, because I know what you're talking about. I'm hearing all this controversy about, like, should we celebrate these holidays and all this? And I'm like, it's a holiday of loving on each other and being thankful. And basically, I mean, that's what we're created to do in life in general. So to have just a day to say, hey, let's turn the volume down on everything else, and let's just focus on what we want to be thankful for, and let's just be in community. Like, what's bad about that?
Right.
Like, that's what it's all about.
Right, yeah. It's what could be more positive than stopping and saying to yourself, be thankful for the abundance that we have in this country and in our families. And it's not monetary.
Yeah.
It's family, it's relationships, it's turduckens.
It is. There's nothing better than that. Well, except for going to my comedy shows. You can find out more about that at
Just
No,
put the
we can't.
drive-through logo
Just
on top of his...
bobsmiley.com. It's short. You just put it right.
Yeah.
Nothing? Okay, well, that was all the time I agreed on. So let's do a takeaway. Man, this has been awesome. This has been amazing.
That's great, yeah. Agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, no, actually, wait. The whole reason why I wanted to come on here, I wanted to share this one thing that's super important with the viewers. No matter what... Oh, no, I got to take this. Nice to meet you.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing anything at all.
Happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, I can't wait to not return your calls again. Cicero, the Greek lawyer and philosopher of ancient Rome, once said, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. That's a profound statement, one that should motivate all of us to give more thanks in our daily lives. Now, I've read about a number of renowned people who think a state of gratefulness, an attitude of gratitude, is the key to a successful life. A thankful heart expresses positiveness, humility, contentment, and happiness. It creates better relationships and better results. Gratitude is often the antidote for the crummy things in life, even the stuff that's gone awry in our country, communities, and culture. A popular business coach once said, if you want to be 100 times more successful in life, you need to be 100 times more grateful. On a spiritual level, if we don't live in a state of thanksgiving with a heart of gratitude towards God, we really can't achieve true joy, meaning, or fulfillment in life. As Christians, a grateful posture towards God allows us to fully and humbly live in a position of grace. Long before the first gathering of Pilgrims at Plymouth Colony, or the first American holiday proclaimed by George Washington, God's presence in the world stood generation upon generation to thanksgiving. In fact, the Bible often speaks of giving thanks to God in all circumstances. Give thanks to the Lord and proclaim His greatness. Let the whole world know what He has done. Enter His gates with thanksgiving. Go into His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and bless His name, for the Lord is good. Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His faithful love endures forever. And no matter what happens, always be thankful, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus. A state of gratefulness, an attitude of gratitude.
a hearts overflowing with thanksgiving. Now that's something to strive for every day, but especially this day, Thanksgiving Day in America.